Amen. And like Savannah said, don't lose heart. Don't give up. When those waves, they get deep, don't give up. Don't lose heart. Don't lose hope. As Michaela said, he's your God in deep waters. He'll hold you and he'll comfort you. And he'll walk beside you when the nights are dark. And he'll be that friend till the very end. Because he knows what's going on when no one else does. I'm pretty sure that Michaela read my Bible notes.
I didn't.
But I don't have perfect proof of that. But tonight, I'm trying to decide which verse I'm going to read. Go with me to the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 2. And if you're familiar with this chapter, I'll go ahead and read the first verse of it. It says, "And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him." You might be seated. And if you're familiar with, this story, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And it's a dream that he can't even remember himself. He can't even remember what he dreamed, but he knows that that dream has troubled his soul, that dream has frightened him, that dream, is tormenting him. And he's struggling with that dream. And over in the book of Genesis, chapter 40, and I'll read verse 8, but we know that this chapter is when Joseph is in prison, and he meets a butler and a baker. And in verse 8 it says, "And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you." And then over in chapter 41 and verse 8, again it says, "And it came to pass in the morning," this is talking about Pharaoh. Pharaoh goes to sleep and he has a dream. And it says that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men therefore. And Pharaoh told him his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Tonight, I want to talk about it's a nightmare. If you've ever had a nightmare, they're quite terrifying. They're not something that you enjoy having. It's not something that you say, you wake up the next morning like, "Ooh, I had a nightmare. Yay, good for me. I get a gold medal." It's not something, when you have a nightmare, you remember them usually. They're not something you forget, and when you do forget them, it's almost worse than when you remember them. But needless to say, these technically it's 4 different people have dreams. And one could honestly consider all of them nightmares. The butler and the baker, they couldn't understand what their dream had meant. Pharaoh, he knew it was a bad dream, but he didn't know what it meant. Nebuchadnezzar couldn't remember his dream at all. Have you ever had a nightmare? Have you ever had a dream that you woke up and you just felt cold and dark and damp, and you grab your chest and you're like, and then you realize that it's just a dream. It's just a dream. But the main person of these men that I really want to focus on is the baker. Because for him, he woke up and his nightmare was reality. Nightmares come in all shapes and sizes, and I looked up what a nightmare is. The definition of a nightmare: a terrifying dream in which the dreamer experiences feelings of helplessness, extreme anxiety, sorrow, etc. A condition or thought or experience suggestive of a nightmare. Something that's not pleasant. Something that chills you to the very bone. It's something that usually you don't forget. It's said that sometimes you can forget the happiest moments in your entire life, but you never forget the tragic ones. And for this, this baker, he woke up and his nightmare was a reality. Maybe tonight, maybe in some form or fashion, I don't know what you're struggling with, but maybe you feel like you're walking through a living nightmare. Maybe you have that nightmare in the night, you grab your chest and you shoot upright, but you realize that the reality, the nightmare would almost be better, because the reality is just as bad. The reality is still dark. You may say, Lord, I'm living in what some would consider a nightmare right now. I'm living in what nightmares are made out of. I'm living in that pure terror of the very day-to-day, that anxiety that fills the soul, that weariness, that hardship, that turmoil. I'm living in a nightmare, God. Maybe you're the baker tonight. You say, Lord, I wake up from the nightmare, God, and it's still there. I wake up from that nightmare, God, but the dream hasn't passed away, hasn't vanished, because it's reality, God. Even David, the man after God's own heart, he said, Lord, why art thou far from me? Why are you holding me at arm's distance? I'm in a nightmare, God. I've got a man chasing me. And when I wake up from my nightmare, it's still there. I go through each day being chased, being trodden down, being defeated, having to run when I know I can destroy him. But yet I'm living in a nightmare. So many men and women in the Bible fought nightmares. Sometimes we talk about our day-to-day life and say, man, that's a nightmare. But I can assure you, it isn't truly a nightmare. See, nightmares, the one thing about nightmares is they only last for a season. Nightmares vanish. But in the moment, in the time that you're dreaming that nightmare, it's terrifying. It's horrible. It's life-changing. And it's real. So very real. Very, very real. And in that nightmare, you don't see how you can possibly be dreaming. You ever had a nightmare like that? Maybe that's what you feel your life is right now. Lord, I've been living this nightmare so long that I can't remember what a daydream is like. I've been living in this darkness. I've been living in this fight. I've been surviving day to day with a fight. Just to breathe, Lord. Just to take another breath takes everything I've got. And it doesn't feel like it'll ever go away. It feels so real. It feels so there. It feels so suffocating. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. Because it's a nightmare. When we have nightmares, we wake up the next morning, we look back and we're like, whew, I'm glad that's over. How many has done that when you've had a nightmare, you're like, I'm glad that was last night, not right now. I'm glad that wasn't reality. I'm glad that's not mine right now. I'm glad I woke up. But I came to tell someone tonight, it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. It will pass. It will go away. Time will move on. And you'll look back and you'll say, it was just a nightmare. That's all it was. It was just a nightmare. And you'll walk out of that trial, that struggle, that burden, and you'll look out and you'll say, the sun still shines. I woke up again today. And it was just a nightmare. I survived it. I moved past it. I healed beyond it. And it was just a nightmare, God. And you know what I've discovered? That I've grown stronger, God, through the nightmare. Because when you pass through the nightmare, and you walk past the shadow of death, as David calls it, and you walk past your very most enemies, and yet you walk to the other side of the enemy's camp, and you survive it, that would be victory. You know, and you look back and you say, was I even there? You know, how did that seem so real? How did it seem so real then? You know, how did I make it through that? But I came to tell someone tonight, it's just a nightmare. Nightmares can be long. They can be very long. If you've ever dreamt, you know, some call them dream sequences. You know, they go on forever, forever, and forever. You know, in the dream, maybe in your head you say, well, I've got to wake myself up. Because I know this is a dream, so I've got to wake myself up. Who's done that? Who's ever thought, I've got to wake myself up out of this dream? I have to wake up. I know it's a dream. I have to wake up. And so in the dream, you proceed to wake yourself up. But for whatever reason, you're not asleep. Anybody ever felt that way? Oh wait, I can't wake up, so therefore it must be real. Maybe that's you right now. Maybe you're stuck in that nightmare and you say, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Please, I have to wake up. I have to wake up. Then for a second, you realize this isn't a dream. This is reality. This is the baker's plot for me. This is my nightmare. This is my trial. This is my battle. This is my darkest day. No, it's so easy to look at other people when they're going through trials and tribulations, when they're going through, per se, nightmares, when they're walking through that. And have you ever met a person that wasn't really paying attention to you? That you're talking to them, but you can tell in their eyes, they're not really paying attention to what you're saying. And you may be talking, and maybe you'll throw in some other details that you know aren't anywhere close related to your conversation, just to see if they're paying attention. And they're like, yeah, definitely. And you're like, man, your shoes are like, and your hair looks horrible. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you got that right. You may have been talking about politics. And then you went from politics to shoe wear. And they don't even know that because they weren't paying attention. Have you ever met a person like that? You know, when you're going through a nightmare, sometimes you tend to not pay attention. encourage you. You know, that tap on the arm, you can do this, you got this. Keep going. You know, serve the Lord. Get him, brother. You know, get him, sister. You can do this, absolutely. And you walk on past and you're like, I'm living in a nightmare. It just keeps going. My nightmare doesn't stop. I don't think it'll ever end. No one seems to care. Because no one is talking to me. No one is truly feeling what I'm feeling. Because no one can see what I'm seeing. Or hear what I'm hearing. Or think the thoughts I'm thinking. No one can truly understand. And these people on the outside, they may be talking to you. Yes, you know, keep going, don't give up. And you want to listen to them. And you know God's out there. You know He's there. You know He loves you. But in your head, clouds of the nightmare, they're blocking you from reality. Because when your nightmare becomes reality, reality sometimes gets blocked by the nightmare. It's hard to bring yourself out of that. It's very hard and very difficult. Because nightmares are real. And sometimes people, you know, kids, you know, they'll have little, you know, younger than Savannah, they'll have nightmares. They'll be like, Mom and Daddy, I had a nightmare. Like, what was it about? And they're like, you know, big bad wolf chased me. Man, it was bad. Can I sleep with you tonight? You know, of course, Mom's like, come here, it's gonna be all right. And baby's like, shh. Are you sure, Mom? Are you sure the big bad wolf's not still out there? And Mom's like, yes. And like, I'm sure he's not in my bedroom somewhere, because I'm pretty sure he must be. And, you know, we may think that's funny, because, you know, the big bad wolf, you know, we know he's not real. You know, we know that there's no such things as, you know, things hiding in our closet or under our beds. But it still doesn't make it any different to that little 2-year-old brain. It doesn't make it feel any more real. Do you have things hiding in your dark rooms? Do you have things that as you walk through life that seem to brush past you and no one else sees them? Do you have moments that don't seem to be real to anyone else but are definitely absolutely real to you? You know, those eyes that stare at you from behind your wardrobe. And Mommy and Daddy says it's not there, but you know what you see. You know, every other person that you pass by, you say, you know, I'm struggling today, and they're like, yeah, okay, you're just being, you know, you go pray about it. It's easy to say, easy to tell someone to do that. But to them, their nightmare is still very much real. Still very much there, still very much lurking in the shadows. You know the interesting thing about nightmares? They aren't called daydreams. They're called nightmares. And they're called nightmares because they come out at night. They find you in your darkest time. When you're struggling most, that's when they find you. They don't find you when you're waltzing through a meadow of buttercups and dandelions and black-eyed Susans. They don't find you there. They find you when you're stumbling along that rocky path. When the moon casts a horrible glow about you and scaring you half to death. That's when the nightmares come and find you. It's when the sun sets, not when the sun rises. You know, you may be struggling. You may just feel you can't take anymore. That's when your nightmares become reality. During the day, when you're positive and happy. But then, in those dark times, in those low spots, when you're just struggling to feel God for yourself, when you're struggling to believe it with all your might, when you're struggling to make yourself believe it. Hearing's one thing, but believing is a whole nother thing. You know, people can tell you something all day long. They can say, did you know so-and-so down the street? I heard about so-and-so. And you may say, yeah, so-and-so said about so-and-so that you knew so-and-so. But yeah, you may have this whole big conversation about so-and-so down the street. But you never really know about so-and-so until you believe what that person told you. It never really registers until you truly believe it in your heart. It's so easy to tell someone something, go pray, but it's so much harder to do it than to say it. And I don't really know why this seemed to pull at my heartstrings. But I know that at 2:31 last night, I opened my eyes, and the phrase that came to me when I said, Lord, I've been praying all week about youth night, it's kind of important. I said, Lord, what do you want me to say? What I heard was, it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. I said, okay. Don't really know how that would pertain to anyone, but okay. Because if God says it's just a nightmare, remember when those eyes stare at you from behind your dresser, when you hear the closet door creak open and someone step out, when you see the people talking but can't hear the words, when you're walking forwards but getting nowhere, God decided in your lowest moment to tell you it's just a nightmare. That's all it is. Time will move on. The morning will dawn. The nightmare will fade. You'll remember those sunshiny meadows again, and not the rock-infested, broken path of darkness. You'll look back and you'll say, how did I ever make it through that nightmare? It felt so real. It felt so cold. It stirred my soul. It froze it to the bone. It chilled my very heart. How did I make it through, God? I'll turn to you and I'll say, because it was just a nightmare. And you'll know it was real. But you also know that it doesn't last forever. That what feels like it's coming from the very pits of hell can't always be that way. Because nightmares don't last forever. They as the first lights of dawn come over those hills. The darkness. And you watch the nightmare flee. You watch it disappear. You watch what you once held in your hand just vanish. What once was your life which was once all that you could see, all that you could hear, all that you could think about, all that you could focus on, all that you could practically handle, and will vanish as if it were never was.